So today's message: in our system, a teacher takes out the hurdles in the progress of the seeker and side by side imparts the divine effulgence in him. Taken from Path of Righteousness, Showers of Divine Grace. Path of Righteousness, message at Hyderabad on 28th May 1967. This is a very happy occasion that I am among my brethren. I pour forth my warm thanks to our associates and others who have helped us in building the yoga ashram, though yet in a miniature. Now we are in a better position to render service to our fellow beings in the best possible way. It is very sad in the present state of society that they have given up the idea of service and taken the idea of masterhood instead. History tells us that we have grown from poverty to power and from servant to master. The idea of master is pregnant really with the idea of service, but generally our saints forget it, although the very idea of service has brought them to their present state. When the basic idea is forgotten, the structure falls off, and there remains neither servant nor master. The proper sort of training, if the Guru is perfect, is that the teacher should generate among his disciples that sort of a smell which leads them to the garden. A man is not fit to impart spiritual training unless and until he has developed the capacity of fomenting his disciples with superior force, which is all and all. Take a pause. Sir, anything to add?
Nothing. Nothing to add. It is a you have to contemplate those sentences. That's all.
So what I was thinking here, when it says idea of master, means superior or being one up, right? And this is where then people.
Master is guru, no? You feel that you know more than the other fellow, and the other fellow should listen to you, and the other fellow should change his view so that he should get in tune with your view. So you have a feeling that you know more than the other fellow. Other fellow should submit to your guidance for his spiritual upliftment. That is the idea of a guru. He feels he is superior to the other fellow. So that feeling should not be there. The idea is guru, master means he should be actually a servant. How to serve him so that he can be happy. How to serve him so that he'll be able to retain the thought of the master in his mind. By removing the obstructions from his psyche. Impurities he has to remove using his will force. So when impurities are removed, then he'll be able to retain the thought of the master for longer and longer periods. That's how Babuji's idea is, master is a servant who serves to see that you are able to be peaceful, you are able to retain the thought of divine continuously. That is the idea of his idea. Now, I think it is, today morning I was talking to my friends. Now, this has become a management mantra also, no? Servant leadership. So, that is, now it has entered into secular lingo also. All top leaders servant leadership, that's the concept now in modern management. A leader is not supposed to command, but serve the people working under his organization.
Yeah. We'll go ahead. The question now arises how to find out such a man. In my humble opinion, they should judge first their fitness to deserve such a master. If they fall short of it, they should make themselves deserving. Sometimes the fortune favors and one gets such a master, even though one is not fit for the best sort of spiritual training. In that case, there is nothing but the grace of God. Those who are deserving, for them, I repeat my pet sentence that the real cry of the thankful heart of a true seeker brings the master to his door. For making oneself deserving, one must have his goal and his present position clearly in his view. Afterwards, one should adopt the means which should be conducive to the spiritual growth and guard against the retarding things which may prevent one from attaining the objective. These should be the basic lines which will constitute the search for reality. There are so many among us who have the idea that simply knowing of God is enough. This is the wrong conception. Having God is the real subject of spirituality.
Does having God means continuous remembrance?
Having God is, you see, you can gain control over the mind only when you become the Lord and the mind becomes your servant. And if you see the third commandment, he says, fix up your goal, which should be complete oneness with God. That means Ishwar. God is Ishwar. You not only reach him, but you should establish a residence permanently there so that there's no fall possible. So that means you live there in his consciousness. So that means you are having God himself. So that is the idea actually, which when he uses the word having God is a real subject of spirituality. It reflects the third commandment. He says you should have permanent stay in that condition. He uses the Urdu word mustaqil. You should be, your stay should become permanent in that condition. If you are saying, oh master, thou art the real goal of human life, now you're conceptually you're saying that he is the goal of life. And when you are wholeheartedly putting your attention on that, you start feeling the peaceful waves coming from him into your mind. And then you develop more attraction, love towards him. A stage comes when union happens. Union is you feel one with him. That is called absorption or samadhi actually. And then that samadhi, he says, should be a permanent one. Then you're having spirituality is that subject. You should have God with you. It should be your position. It should not be an object outside of yourself. It should be, there should be oneness, union between you and God. So then nobody can say who is God and who is you. Both become one. So the yoga is actually union, no? That means when we are meditating on divine light, we want our mind to merge into that object actually. So that is the purpose of yoga. Then only the mind comes under control. Till that time, it will not come under control. You are having glimpses of that union when you lose your body sense and time sense. That many people have experienced, but then that should become a steady experience. It should end in what is called Sahaja Samadhi in our system.
We'll go ahead. If we proceed methodically, experiences are there and the transformation takes its root from the very first day. Of course, there are experiences in the beginning which are mixed up with imaginary ideas, but as we proceed on, we come to that sort of experience in the end, which requires no other experience. This is interesting. We come to that sort of experience in the end, which requires no other experience. There are so many who worship God in their own way, but aimlessly. So they remain revolving in the sphere they have started from. Generally, the people adopt the methods which they see others following. It is a sad tale of Hinduism that every so-called saint gives one method or the other without having any experience of his own in the field of spirituality. The method should be correct and dynamic based on the experiences of great saints or sacred scriptures. One should grasp it earnestly, not devoting oneself to the ways and means which do not carry one far. I am reminded of the words of historian Al-Biruni, who came to India in 11th century. He said that the degeneration of the Hindus has commenced because they were not prepared to heed others' point of view. They think of themselves as final in every sphere of life.
This is an important point in the spiritual practice. Suppose a person has got a feeling that I know the master, and then I know this. I've done meditation. I know how to meditate, and then there's nothing much to learn. That feeling can come quite easily because of the ego. If that feeling comes, then the path becomes closed actually. So unless you try to maintain a feeling of humility and simplicity, that if you actually analyze your condition, you know that still you are not reached the state where you can feel that you have reached firm ground and where you feel that your mind is totally under your control. You can easily know that by examining yourself. That means you don't have a condition of plainness and simplicity which does not leave your mind. It should be a permanent condition. So that we can easily know. As long as that is there, if you are aware of that thing and you maintain your attitude that you are still a learner, you have to still learn, you have to still see the distance, you have to still travel on and on like Anant ki Or. Unless that attitude is maintained, the feeling that you already know means that's the gate gets closed actually. So that's a problem. That is why when we meet our gurus and saints and all that, we are exposed to certainly higher vibration. Then we know that we have to. There's a lot of home to cover. Still, the goal is you're not yet reached the goal. Still, it is some distance I have to travel. Then you keep your mind open, and then you start striving towards the goal. Actually. That is the idea. If you get a feeling that I already know, then there is stagnation creeps in that. And this is a very common feeling. I several times had this feeling, unless you're very alert and then keep maintain your diaries regularly and then be in touch with your trainer, it's very easy to get a feeling that you know quite a lot about spirituality.
So we'll go ahead. In our system, a teacher takes out the hurdles in the progress of the seeker and side by side imparts the divine effulgence in him, which, if Abhyasi does it himself, takes hundreds of years and often fails to clean his system. We start with the meditation upon heart, taking the object of meditation as subtle as possible. Sri Ramanujachari has forbidden meditation on concrete object on the basis of ancient authority. I earnestly pray that all of us, leaving our prejudices, may come to the path of righteousness which promises liberation. Anything to add?
Can anybody summarize what is the main theme of that Hyderabad talk? What are the main points is stressed?
So first thing is to be aware that we are. I mean, all the time we are servant. We need to serve without even having the iota of idea of master or mastery about anything. And so that was the main essence.
Yeah, first he spoke about the ashram inauguration. He says that gives us an opportunity to serve humanity better. Then second point, he spoke about the master and servant. And he says people have forgotten that master means servant. And then the idea of service is gone, the whole structure collapses. He says neither servant will be there nor the master will be there. So master means basically the servant, he says. And then he goes on to say that you have to put a question whether you deserve such a master or not. Then he says, so you have, then he gives a clue to the Abhyasi. He says you have to put a question whether you deserve such a master. And he says for that you have to do two things. First of all, you should have a clear knowledge about the goal, nature of the goal. That means, oh master, there's a liberation or freedom, or that is the goal. And then your present state of mind, how your mind is having contradictions, how your mind is a slave to desires and fears and insecurities, uncertainty, fear about uncertainty about future, and craving for recognition, craving for all those things can be known. So once you know that, then you should. Then he says you should adopt means. There is the concept of Pratikulya Savarjanam and Anukulya Sankalpa. You should try to do things which will help you to reach the goal and avoid things which will form an obstruction to the goal. And then he goes on to say that as you meditate, you'll get experiences. Initially, it may be imaginative. Finally, the experience become more and more divine. And then finally, you get an experience which requires no further experience. That means there's such firm conviction that you don't require any proof to tell yourself that you've that you reach the goal or something like that. And then he goes on to give the experience of Al-Biruni, who says how Hinduism has failed because they felt they knew everything. And then finally he talks about the role of the trainer, how he removes the obstructions, and then side by side he gives us divine impulse to help you on the path, and finally prays for all of us to reach liberation actually. So that is the whole idea of the Hyderabad speech. So actually, we had like Chalapati was there, our brother. They read it so much, so they could straight away they would be able to quote everything. Almost they got showers of divine grace by heart actually. Unless we also become familiar with all these words. So there will be a poverty in our awareness about the heart of the master or the mind of the master. So unless you know him thoroughly, how can you merge into him? So this reading and then studying and contemplating his ideas is a kind of a preliminary practice actually. The more you know about him, the more intimacy will develop. So you should keep on reading these. Babuji himself says that you should read my book, 10 Commandments, again and again. We will read one or two paragraphs in Silence Speaks.
Okay.
We left off.